Hi, Dennis Weiss. Welcome to our town. As you can see in the background, Community Foundation of Dickinson County's back there, which is in the old Astor Bank building. You need to come down and see them when you have a chance. Thank you, Elizabeth Weiss. Alan, LaPolice, thank you for coming.
Thank you, sir.
So,
always a pleasure.
A couple of things. Thanks for calling. I don't get many calls from people running for Congress going, I'd really like to talk about what I can do for your community, which is what our town is all about, the good things that are going on. So, and I'd originally had you scheduled to be at the Eisenhower Presidential Library because it's really both of us our favorite place in town.
It is.
Maybe favorite place. So, but beyond that, Constitution Week's going on over there, so they're down to really the visitor center and then the library with the museum undergoing a major renovation in 2018. So we couldn't be there, but that doesn't stop us from talking about Eisenhower, sir.
I always enjoy talking about Eisenhower.
So you're running for the big first district, United States Representative to Congress.
Yes, sir.
That's a big task.
It's an absolutely essential task because someone good has to do it. Someone who still believes in Eisenhower.
So let's talk about Eisenhower and leadership. So Congress, that's a leadership position. A big one.
It is.
So, you know, we're fortunate to be in Abilene, Kansas. We have one of the best examples anywhere in the world of leadership under the most difficult circumstance. That's Dwight David Eisenhower.
Correct.
What's your favorite Eisenhower thing?
There's many, but I think I shared this story that when he was being solicited to run for president, so he was still Allied commander, and you know he was still in the military capacity. Truman was president. Truman thought he got along with him great, and he did for the most part. But Truman thought for sure he was going to get him to run as a Democrat, and follow up in the same policies that Truman was pushing for. And when he came out and he completely shed his military uniform, he chose to run as a Republican. Now, the important thing about that is he ran, and I believe the year was 1952 when he took office. And he took control of the government at a time when, you know, we had catastrophic debt and we were coming out of the war and there was all these things that we needed to rebuild. And the first 2 years, he had a Republican House and a Republican Senate. A Democratic House, Democratic Senate,
right.
And he was the Republican executive. After the midterms, he took what some would call a shellacking. He lost control of both the House and the Senate. It went to the Democrats. Over the course of the next 6 years, he implemented some of the best economic growth policies that this nation has ever seen. There was just never an expansion like we saw in the 50s and 60s, and it bled in through the 70s. And yes, we had a progressive tax structure, and no, I would never advocate for that style of progressive tax structure again. But with that, they repaid all of the war debt, just virtually all of it. The Marshall Plan rebuilt most of Europe and made most of the people our allies. But they also took that money and invested in infrastructure, education, science, and technology. And we built a middle class unlike the world had ever seen. No nation before had ever created a middle class. It just doesn't exist. There's those that have and those that have not, and there's the ruling class and the following class. And Eisenhower did something unique. He established a working class, a farming class, an industrial labor class. And because of that, we became the economic superpower. We built all our highways, almost all the schools, the city buildings, the courthouses, all of that stuff came out of that period of expansion. But it was chosen expansion.
You'll always allow me to restate or summarize what I like about your point.
Yeah.
You said he had a progressive tax structure. No, you wouldn't advocate for that. Then you told the story. So I'm going to summarize and restate that. The progressive tax structure did not create the growth. The growth created the growth.
Sure.
Our explosion of true growth, economic growth during the Eisenhower years is what built all that infrastructure. People with jobs, having enough money left over to have a better house, better car, bigger farm, bigger business. All of those things is what provided us. Still today, we're only building on the foundations of the Eisenhower administration. Our economy today, global economy, is built on the reconstruction of Europe.
Correct.
Accomplished by the Eisenhower years.
Right. And again, I'm not advocating for that structure, but we did three things at once. In the 50s, we did three things. We paid down the war debt because we were selling war bonds, but there was still a lot of debt. Right. We also rebuilt Europe. through the Marshall Plan. So we did that, and we built the infrastructure that we still use today. We built that all. And what I'm saying is that the tax structure that we had in place, and again, not advocating for that, but the tax structure allowed those three things to happen all synergistically. They all happened together where they couldn't have happened. And my point is this: despite that tax structure, corporations still did quite well.
That's right.
They still were able to grow capacity, grow their labor force. They were still able to make a profit. No one was complaining, especially considering you could bring your tax base down by investing. And so that's why you got so much altruism, you got so much philanthropy, because they did want to bring their tax liability down. And so they did. They would invest in local schools and churches, and they'd invest in parks. And all these parks that got built were, offsetting this higher rate. So what I'm saying is that rate didn't curtail the growth. It didn't. Agree. Yeah, and again, not advocating for that.
I think the three things, no matter what your position is on any of these one things, I think the thing about the Eisenhower years that it should be compelling to us economically is that managing a national economy and a national tax plan and a national societal revolution is really what made all that possible. And it all has to work together. So bringing us to Eisenhower, undeniably one of the best leaders in American history of working with difficult people in difficult circumstances to achieve greatness. So here you are running for Congress in the most divided time that anybody that watching this program has ever lived through of American politics. So what's Eisenhower got to teach us?
Stop dividing. Stop dividing. If you go back one other great Republican leader, you've got Lincoln, and Lincoln saw the division. He saw the polarization. He saw the North versus the South, and now we've got the same thing, red versus blue. And Eisenhower would have said, knock it off. This guy was he was a military man. Now, military, and I'm a military man myself. I'd never be as great.
Saw the picture. You look like a kid.
I was a very young man.
Well, you still look awfully young, but you look like 12 years old, and I thought, where'd they get that kid out of middle school in Clyde to go to Gulf Storm?
It was a point of conversation when But in the military, there's all this discussion about what military men and women fight for, and we fight for a nation. We don't fight for a party. I've never heard a single soldier say that I'm fighting for the Republican Party or the values of the Republican Party, or I'm fighting for the Democrats. They fight to keep this country together. They fight to keep us all safe. Now, let me point out that there is no power on earth, there is no enemy force outside of our borders that can damage us quite so much as we can damage ourselves.
Amen.
We can be afraid of terrorism, we can be afraid of ISIS and Al-Qaeda, and we can be afraid of Russia, the bear, we can be afraid of China, the financial juggernaut. We can be afraid of those things. But they cannot do nearly the damage that we have done to ourselves. And we've done this through partisanship. We've done this through deciding that our enemy isn't foreign powers with militaries. Our enemy isn't forces of nature like this hurricane that's barreling it down on us. Or our enemy's not poverty and lack of access to education or to opportunity. We've decided that the enemy is just the guy or girl who says, I'm a Democrat. Or the man or woman who says, well, I'm a Republican. And we've decided to take ourselves down by labeling, just based on some small minor differences. And they are minor. They can say, people can argue that they're major differences, but they're truly not. We all want economic security. We all want the best for our children. We all want national safety. The core values are the same. How you get there is just a difference of opinion. That difference of opinion shouldn't lead to us creating our own enemy and then destroying ourselves from within. And that's what we've done. And I blame the politicians, because the parties capitalize on fear of the other party. The Republicans get to say, you see those Democrats? They're the enemy, so now you've got to double down on us. And so they hold on to their power by making the voters afraid of the other party. And the other party leadership, the Democrat leadership, they do the exact same thing. They say, vote for us because, oh, look what Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell are doing. So all the parties are doing is they're reinforcing their strength and their hold on the political positions that they've gotten for themselves. And they win by making all of us lose. whether you claim to be a Democrat or claim to be a Republican, we lose whenever they pit us against each other. And I don't mean to sound conspiratorial, but you watch every single day. You've got your media outlets that say, well, we're left-leaning but center, we're right-leaning but center. No, you're not. You're capitalizing on your base and using fear to divide up the people.
You know, I think our theme about Eisenhower here makes it easy for us to have something common to discuss, right? So you talked about you fighting for a country. I say it a little differently. I think people sign up to go fight for their country. But I think history teaches us over and over and over again, in the middle of the battle, you're fighting for and with the guy next to you.
Yeah.
Right? So it becomes a personal thing. It's not a country thing anymore in a foxhole or a trench. It's a personal thing. It's the person next to you. It's your team. It's your four-man fire team. It's your crew. Those sorts of things. What a lesson for us. Whether it's the Community Foundation or Dickinson County, Abilene, Dickinson County, state of Kansas, guy running for Congress. When we choose to work together for a common goal with the guy next to us, we didn't ask to see the voter registration in a foxhole.
Right.
We didn't ask, are you a Democrat or Republican?
Or faith. I don't remember.
Or faith, or any other dividing
Yeah.
line. Race, creed, or color, kind of, you know, right out of the Constitution. So what we ask is, do you have ammo?
Yeah.
Will you watch my six? Will you watch the left? We revert to those things when it comes to politics in America.
Yeah.
I think we'll be better off. What say you?
I agree 100%. I agree 100% because, and this is sort of a sub point of that. I mean, I was in foxholes, and I was with, I remember there's this story, a great big black gentleman named Henson, right? And he was 30 years old, and he was starting a new career. He decided to join the military. He was infantry like me. And, growing up in Clyde, Kansas, I didn't encounter a lot of African-American men. I hadn't really had, a dialogue with a black guy from inner
or
city
anybody
Chicago.
else different from you, frankly.
Yeah. But I remember Henson, this towering man, and I looked up to him as like, this raw strength and stability. And I remember on the night that we got attacked, we had a Scud explode over our heads, and so the gas alarms went off, and everything was just going crazy. And I remember you couldn't see through the masks, but I remember this great big man, Henson from Chicago. He already had kids and family, and he was just strength. And he was crying on my shoulder. I'm little Alan LaPolice, and I look like I'm 12, and I'm all 105 soaking wet. And Henson is crying on my shoulder, looking to me for strength. And there was something about that didn't matter where he came from, what his background was, didn't matter me and my background. The fact that we were both in this together and we needed each other for the strength to keep on going. And I'll never forget that story because it just told me that, together we'll get through it. Alone, even the biggest, strongest guy, he's going to fail.
Yeah. Are we not still there in our country? Are we not still in those situations of ultimate crisis about our survival, our prosperity? And is not the cure the same?
It is.
Look to the fellow next to you, no matter what, who, how, and find a way to cooperate. Rely
on each other's strength. Yeah, that's what we have to do. And it doesn't matter if that guy is a little white boy from, Clyde, Kansas. Rely on each other's strength. And I always tell the story of it's a biblical story of the father with the sons and the twigs, and he brings them together and he has them break the sticks, and each stick, each son had been fighting. Each son could break the stick easily, and he bundles the sticks together and he gives them to the boys and he says, break this. And the boys would try as hard as they could, and the strongest of them couldn't break the sticks because they were bundled together. And he said, that is us. That is what we are. Together, we are unbreakable. But independent, divided, we will all surely break. And that's the lesson.
That's a great lesson. So I think about that, and I have some good news for you.
Sure.
I'm taking vacation the first 2 weeks of October. I'm going to see my brother in Colorado, who I haven't got to spend a lot of time with in probably 30, 40 years. I see him, but not to spend time with him. So I'm going to spend 2 weeks, and we're going to ride mules all over the Rocky Mountains and the desert Southwest, which is what we did growing up, except we had horses then. He's a mule man, so we're riding mules.
They're a bit slower.
So we only had one rule. My dad only had one rule for us, and that is this: you will not fight. You could argue, you could disagree, You will not fight. We violated that rule once, and we learned quickly that Dad meant that what he said, it was a rule. But from there, when we understood that and operated that way, civilly towards each other, the freedom that my brother and I had from this age on up, unparalleled. Unparalleled. Because together we were the equal of any man in any job, and thus had the freedom to go do that. The lesson's still here. With cooperation, there's nothing that cannot be gained.
And I'll bet you my last dollar that you and your brother don't see eye to eye on every issue.
Oh, no, heavens no. We still argue about stuff all the time, but we won't be fighting about it.
Because it only makes you weaker.
Yeah.
Now, who benefits from that? When any two people or any two peoples of a nation, when they battle each other, what comes of that? What good can possibly come of that? Now, I'm going to turn this to my opponent in this race. He campaigned on the idea that he was going to be bipartisan. He said the problems in Washington all come from the fighting. We have to be bipartisan. It's the only way. That was his campaign pledge. And he said, I'm going to reach, and these are his words, I'm going to reach across the aisle, down the aisle, up in the aisle. You know, and I don't think he actually knows what prepositions do. But he claimed that he was going to be this bipartisan fixer. Now, since taking office, he has not been bipartisan on a single piece of legislation. There's nothing he's done that's bipartisan. And now that he's got the R next to his name, and I'd argue that he's not a Republican in this race because he holds none of the values that I've held dear as a Republican. Now he feels that there's no need to debate me, no need to challenge me publicly, no need to...
Wow, the Community Foundation just descended, Dave. Wow.
Maybe it's what I'm saying. Maybe it's
could be. That's all right. We can roll with anything.
I'm fine with that. He's decided that he does not need to speak to any of the independents, the unaffiliated, the Democrats least of all, because they don't count to him. And he doesn't care about any of the Republicans that may want to know his positions on these issues. So he's not doing a single campaign event other than private, profitable, closed to the public fundraisers. And he's gone on record saying that his campaign events are only closed-door private fundraisers.
That's a saddening thing. I'm going to use the word incumbent, if it's okay with you.
Sure.
This is a community show, right? I have noticed this in incumbency because there was a time when we first started doing these filmings, I would take the time to find everybody's email address.
Yes, sir.
I would, working with the Chamber of Commerce to have local forums, local debates. I invited everybody many times to everything. I had the worst difficulty with incumbents other than locals, getting them to come because they felt like there was nothing to be gained from showing up in a situation where their competitor might look better than them. I understand that as a political ploy, if you will, or not ploy, but as a political tactic. But it's wrong for us, the voters. Don't we deserve to have people sit down and answer the questions on how you're going to vote, what you're going to do, what you're going to say on my behalf? Don't we deserve that as voters?
We do. It's incredibly dismissive and it's arrogant. And you talk about being a leader. That's not anything that a man, a true leader like Eisenhower would have done. I mean, he would address his troops. He would address his constituents. He didn't ignore his opposition. He certainly didn't ignore Truman, even when Truman picked fights with him after Eisenhower was elected. Because leaders don't do that. There's no leader on earth that dismisses fully half the population. There's no leader that dismisses the opposition when they could easily address those concerns and learn from those. And to say to the voters of this district that I don't want to get in front of you and have you ask me questions, it is incredibly arrogant and it is dismissive to the entire process.
I find it really discouraging as a person raising an 18-year-old boy who's our youngest in the family, and he's very engaged. And every day he keeps me up on what's going on in the news and to his particular interest. And he's very informed. And then I think about how can I encourage him to get engaged with what we're talking about, which is making sure you're registered to vote and you know who they are, what they think, and then cast your vote accordingly. And I look at the rest of his generation around them and I go, nobody's reaching back. really, to these people in a conversation
Right.
where it could expose theirself to a hard question. And that's a mistake, whether it's the guy you're running against or just anybody in general.
Right.
This isn't the only example of that, where people just, they have plenty of time to talk to each other once they're in politics, but this come back and talk to voters seems to be not the priority that I wish it would be.
Well, this office is two things. It is a leader, and so you're supposed to help lead the nation, lead through difficult times as well as the successful times. But B, particularly this office, this is a representative. And we live in a representational democracy, a representative democracy. Now, it is not a true democracy where everybody has the same kind of power.
Representative republic.
But well, yes, but democracy, let me clarify. Democracy only means the people have power down the line at its foundation. So we are in a constitutional republic, representational democracy.
Okay.
That's my argument.
All right.
And I can argue all day about we don't live in a true democracy because I don't get to vote on how the money's spent. And I don't want to because we got 330-some million people. But it is representational. And when you are representing, you're not representing just the people who voted for you because you don't know. We have secret ballot. So you don't know who's voting for you. Because of primaries, Roger can assume he got Republican votes, or the incumbent can assume. But the reality is he was elected to represent all of the 1st District and to support the agenda of Kansas as one of our federal delegates. Now, to dismiss the vast majority of people, even dismissing his own party, by not discussing the issues and not standing by his voting record and saying, here are my accomplishments, I'm asking you to renew my lease on this job because I will represent you. By him doing that, he's failing as a representative and he's failing as a leader because neither of those things, choosing to not do those things it's not representational and it's not leadership.
So Alan LaPolice, I told you this one time when we shut the camera off. Anytime you want to come talk about things in the city, the county, the region, the state, the nation, you're welcome, because I think what you have to say is clear, and I think it's important. The fact that you're running for office is nearly meaningless to what we're talking about today for me. It just is. I think people need to be heard. People with a vision for the future, they need to be able to test our ideas, yours and mine. Mine get tested all the time. So I think it's important that we give up people an opportunity to know what we think and they can decide. And I think that's a good thing. So I so appreciate you coming and standing again for my no edit, including a sign falling down.
That's poignant.
And all of the words that were said today are on this program.
I'm very grateful for the time, and I'm not. This is a conversation about what our country has been with Eisenhower in our history, what our country is right now with the ag concerns and just the division. But it's also a chance to discuss what it could be.
What it could be.
What it could be, and I say this: the greatest tragedy of this American experiment is the disparity between what our nation is now and what we could be, because what we could be is tremendous. And I love this country. We are the greatest nation on earth. But where we could be with science and with society in general, where we could be with education, where we could be with production agriculture, where we could be, we are not there. And we should always aspire to be there. We should always aspire to get there because that's what the American experiment is.
Can't end much better than that, sir, so we're going to do it. We're out of time. Alan LaPolice joined me today to talk about our town, our community, our region, our state, our nation, and a little bit about the world, and a whole lot about Mr. Eisenhower, which is our favorite thing to talk about. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, sir.
We'll see you again.
Absolutely.
I'm Dennis Weiss, work for Eagle Communications, wishing you a great day.